Connect, collaborate, and change. Welcome to GAiN 2015. Jesus was the best connector that ever walked the earth. He knew how to engage people who were looking for a better life. He's the ultimate example of friendship and kindness. He did not judge as others did. He looked at the heart and needs of the person. Jesus and his disciples were on the way to Galilee, passing through Samaria, and Jesus was weary. He sat at the side of Jacob's well to rest in the heat of the noonday sun. He was tired and he was thirsty. He wanted a drink of water from the well, and yet he had no way to get it. His disciples had gone to get food, and Jesus was alone. The Jews and Samaritans were bitter, bitter enemies. A Jew would not receive any kind of favors from a Samaritan, nor even receive a kindness. A woman of Samaria came to get water in the heat of the day because of her immorality. She was shunned by other women, so she stayed to herself. In the heat of the noonday sun, no one was usually at the well. She turned to leave and seemed unaware Jesus was sitting at the side of the well. Custom forbade her to ask him if he wanted a drink, so she ignored him even if she realized his presence. But Jesus asked a simple favor, "Will you please give me a drink?" That one request broke several rules of the day. First, Jews were not supposed to speak to Samaritans. 2, men were not permitted to speak to women in public, and this included female relatives without their husbands present. This was grounds for divorce. And 3, a rabbi had no business speaking to any shady woman. But Jesus was tossing out the rules. He was connecting. She was taken aback, but also intrigued by his question. She wanted to know why he would ask her for a drink of water. Jesus takes this opportunity to introduce her to the living water. She begins to realize there's more to the request than the water. He's offering her something, a free gift, living water. Water that bestows life, something that she thirsts for. He also indicated that she was speaking to someone special. She got it. She had learned of the divine, and her heart was touched. Jesus gently spoke with this woman and broke down her defenses in a very loving way. He revealed himself to her gently. He knew her. Jesus not only knew she had 5 husbands and was living with another, but she was given the opportunity to have her sins forgiven. He also knew that she was seeking a better life. As they collaborated, she recognized who he was, and she was overjoyed. She could not wait to share her joy and discovery of the Messiah. She ran back to tell anyone who would listen. She left her water pot behind at the well. She forgot the Savior's thirst in her rush to spread the good news. She was overjoyed with her discovery of the Messiah. She told the villagers that this stranger knew things about her that he could not possibly have known. She encouraged them to come and see and hear, and they did. She became a better disciple than Jesus' own disciples. The Samaritans came, and they too believed, and they were changed. Jesus socialized with the Samaritans and became their friend. They wanted Jesus to stay with them, but he was on a journey and could only give them 2 days of his time. And they pleaded with him, and Jesus listened and delayed his journey. We are reminded that our pleadings are also heard by our Savior. This woman, the most unlikely person, became a disciple for Jesus and won many, many people to the Savior. The many who believed were grateful for this woman introducing them to Jesus. Jesus is looking for open hearts. Wherever hearts are open, he's ready. Christ is ready to enter the open heart. The disciples saw nothing in Samaria that indicated there would be a great work there, and they hardened their hearts. A woman they despised brought a city full of people to Jesus. They did not understand what had happened until after Jesus ascended to heaven. They could not see the work that needed to be done. Now, come with me on another journey into the future. The year is 2020. The Internet of Everything is becoming a reality. Over 50 billion devices will be connected to the Internet of Everything. People to people, machines to machines, and people to machines, turning information into actions that create new capabilities and richer experiences. All these devices are connected and networked to each other through globally agreed upon standards with the cloud and other services. With billions and trillions of connections, things that were silent will have a voice. With all these connections, the power of the internet grows exponentially. It becomes a network of networks. Metcalfe's law, Robert Metcalfe is the founder of 3Com, states that the value of communication network is proportional to the square of the number of users connected to the system. Think of how Facebook has changed our lives, a social network. We connect in ways that we just take for granted. I wake up on a Monday morning and I pick up my device. It knows who I am. The days of passwords are gone. It has also charged all night without a cable. Another relic of the past, gone. It is February and it snowed 4 inches last night. My device knows it snowed and also that the GC is opening 2 hours late. My device has rescheduled my day and notified all those involved. I was gently awakened a half hour later than normal by pre-programmed instructions in my device about weather events. The stove activates an hour late to begin cooking my breakfast, which is done to perfection. My car is automatically activated by my voice command so it can defrost and melt the snow and ice. I then step outside on my sidewalk that is free from ice and snow that is melted due to the built-in sensors. The navigation system in my car takes me to work by the best cleared routes. When I arrive at the GC employee entrance, the sidewalk there is also clear of ice and snow. My car drops me off at the employee entrance and self-parks itself in its assigned place. I simply look at the retina scanner at the employee entrance and the door opens. No more worry about losing my badge or leaving it at home. That evening, my car picks me up at the employee entrance by instructions from my device. The voice-activated navigation system in my car takes me to the local hospital to visit a friend. My friend has just received a kidney created by a 3D bioprinter. Thousands of lives are saved every year with these on-demand 3D bioprinted kidneys. Not only are lives saved by the creation of kidneys and other organs that are 3D bioprinted on demand, the surgery is done by robots with no human error. Perfect surgery every time. What about education? Pew outlines this scenario. By 2020, higher education will be quite different from the way it is today. There will be mass adoption of teleconferencing and distant learning to leverage expert resources. Significant numbers of learning activities will move to individualized, just-in-time learning approaches. There will be a transition to hybrid classes that combine online learning components with less frequent campus visits and in-person meetings. Most learning assessments will take into account more individually oriented outcomes and capacities that are relevant to the subject that is being mastered. Requirements for graduation will be significantly shifted to customize the outcomes. The North American Division is presently developing the Adventist Learning Community, which is designed to bring people to the kingdom of Christ in the 21st century. It will bring training, education, and free resources sponsored by the church. It will be launched early this year and will change education and learning as we know it. Am I dreaming of these events? No. All these things are either in development or on the drawing board for development. In 2014, 42% of the world was connected to the internet. By 2020, most of the world will be connected to the internet, again, through globally accepted standards in the cloud and other services. 7.5 years ago, the iPhone was released, and now they are in the hands of 500 million people. This is just the iPhone. The end of 2014, there are 7.3 billion active cell phones, more than the population of the world. In 1996, 18 years ago, the first cell phone was connected to the internet. Again, there are more active cell phones than people on the earth, and they are all connected. Imagine the possibilities with just cell phones and cell phone apps. How does this relate to our mission? God has given us a tremendous gift, the gift of technology, including the internet, with the ability to connect globally in ways we are still discovering. How are we as technology evangelists going to use the Internet of Everything to connect, collaborate, and change as we meet the woman at the well. Welcome to GAiN 2015. We're so glad that you could join us today. We'd like to know who is joining us and from what countries are represented around the world. Please type in where you're from so we can acknowledge you. So far today, we've had over 900 people viewing our broadcast from 67 countries, and we welcome you. We've already had a question come in today from Haiti, but before we address that question, let me introduce our guests today on the panel. D.P. Harris is here from Loma Linda University. Thank you for joining us, D.P. And Ron Biemeister from the Adventist University in Africa. And we're going to share with you some thoughts today. We have a question that I'd like to ask you, and it's from Haiti. Is there an added distraction to opening a smartphone to verses in the Bible during a sermon? DP, what do you think?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I find using my smartphone in church and in the Bible to be a very way to quickly engage in the sermon. I am aware, though, that if I pull out my phone, there are people around me who might wonder what I'm doing. They might think as I'm doing this that I'm texting. So I might be distracting them while it is a useful experience for me.
And I would add, Nancy, that I know some people who have put their phone on silent may suddenly see, oh, I have some text messages or I have some emails. And I think a lot depends on the individual and the discipline. It's very easy to use it just for that. There's no reason to go see the text messages and the emails. Those can be dealt with later. But that's each one, and as you said, DP, the context. Is that smartphone going to be distracting to those around me?
I'm wondering, from those in the audience, do you find using the Bible at church to be a useful thing? Does it bother you when other people do it? Type in your answer about whether you enjoy using the Bible as part of a church and whether it enriches the experience or whether it bothers you. We'll see some of those answers later on.
And as we're waiting for those answers to come in, let's talk a little bit about Facebook, which is can be another distraction.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. So what do you find that the value of Facebook is? And I'm going to narrow this down for you, Ron.
Okay.
In the context of evangelism, connecting, as the theme of our GAiN conference is.
Well, Facebook is, Facebook, as I look at it, can be a terrific tool for connecting with people, for staying in touch with people that otherwise you would not be able to because of time, distance, a variety of factors. Sometimes we use Facebook in such a careless way, I would say, where all we're doing is just, clicking like, putting a smiley face, nothing else. I don't feel that those are personal things. When somebody puts a comment that addresses me and says, Ron, I hope you're having a terrific day, or I heard you had this issue, I hope things are better now, that makes me feel good and engages me and makes me feel like there is something there that you can build on. But you can't build a relationship, which is how we know people come to Christ, with smiley faces and likes.
Like. It's not the same as if I actually responded to you and asked questions. But we like that a lot.
Yeah, and so as we're talking about the personal touch that Jesus had with the woman at the well, that face-to-face communication, the non-judgmental questions that he asked to draw her out, these are the example that he has set for us. And did you know that that conversation that Jesus had with the woman at the well was the longest recorded conversation that Jesus had in the Bible.
Oh,
Really?
Yes, yes, it really was. And you look at who he had this conversation with.
a nobody.
A nobody. A person that was rejected.
We have another question that's come in.
We have another question. We are asked if June asks if there is any free web server that is offered by the church to cater small church websites.
Oh, now that's a very interesting question. Actually, there are. I think we have the Net Adventist.
Yes, we do.
And I think we can follow up afterwards, June, and on the social media. If you ask the question onto your Facebook or someplace, I think we'll get the links that'll give you directly where your church can get a free website. I'm not sure where your church is, but we do have quite a few, many churches that are using a system that has been sponsored by the General Conference.
So, DP, what do you see as the effectiveness of these church websites?
Well, you know, I think it was Ron that was saying earlier, there was a time if you're not on the internet, you don't exist. When I'm going to a different area, I'd say a strange area, but when I'm going someplace where I haven't been before, I want to see what the churches are like because I want to find a church to worship with on Sabbath. I don't know what I might be visiting you in your country or in your state or your city. And so I'm going to go onto the internet and I'm going to Google for Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I'm going to find the different churches that come up. And I'm going to then look at the web pages and I'm going to see who has friendly pictures on there and who has programs that are geared at children my age. And the more inviting the web page looks, the more likely I'm going to be to visit it.
And then you have situations like I had here in the U.S. We'll leave the name of the town out of it. And I was visiting there and I said, okay, where's the Adventist church? Searched for it, found the church website, which gives an address and a location. And I found it on the map. Mm-hmm. Sabbath morning, and says church services at 9:30. It was about 2 miles from the hotel where I was staying, so no big deal. I showed up at 9:28. There's a church building there.
And
it is locked.
Oh.
Because it was not an Adventist church building. It was a Baptist or Methodist building that they rented, and that was clear on their website, so that was fine. And so, we walked around, looked for signs, didn't see anything. So we decided we'd drive back to our hotel and have some worship service. We asked a little bit, didn't do anything. As I'm about to turn into the hotel parking lot, I see a sign 50 yards ahead that says Seventh-day Adventist Church, turn in here. I could have walked.
Oh, from the hotel.
From the hotel. They had moved their venue, not updated the website. If I had been staying any other hotel in that resort area, I would never have made it to church. As it turned out, they did not have a speaker because the speaker had an accident or something else, and I wound up speaking for church.
Oh, wow.
so do you think that, I don't think that was coincidence.
Well, but the point is, it was fortunate.
Yes.
God worked things out, but it would have been for a seeker who's seeking our church.
Yes.
So easy to say, well, that website must be out of date, forget it, and never come to church.
I think we have some answers to some of the questions
Well, we
asked earlier.
do. We do have some answers, and Cassandra answered one of yours. And she
Thank
says,
you, Cassandra. I appreciate it.
my church uses technology every Sabbath. The millennium generation of my church only use smartphones to post sermon notes real time on Facebook and Instagram
Yes.
to share their church experience for that Sabbath. It is accepted in my city, which is Washington, D.C., right where we are.
Okay.
And so then we have another answer. Melbourne answers the question about distracting smartphones, saying that sometimes it can be an added distraction. When everyone else around you tends to look at your phone, wondering why you are taking it out. especially those who have a problem using the phone for the Bible.
Yeah.
And that does present an issue. And I think as we adjust, people adjust to this, and the only way we're going to adjust is to do it.
There's a text in the Bible. Paul says at one place, I don't know, you all remember this text. He says, everything is permissible, but not everything is edifying. And you want to, whatever you're doing, you want to make sure that even though in your freedom to use the technology, as Cassandra would do in her church in D.C., you don't want to be distracting.
Yeah.
And if it's going to distract from people, you do want to take that into consideration.
And there are some churches where you'd be best to carry your traditional Bible in quarterly and not pull out your smartphone, because it's going to cause a whole lot less distraction. It's going to allow people to worship.
Yes.
And I think we need to remember, what's the purpose of going to church? It's worshiping God.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be a major stumbling block to those around us, maybe it's better to do it a little bit differently, even if it's a little bit less convenient for myself.
Well, with this in mind, tell us a little bit about the cell phone use in the country, the continent that you live on right now, Ron. It's rather interesting.
Yes, it is. You know, Kenya is a very interesting country, and there have been a couple of interesting reports in the last week or so, because all of the year-end statistics come out. And Kenya has more active cell phone lines than people. So we have more cell phones than men, women, and children, including babies.
Combined.
So obviously some people have more than one, and I've seen that personally. And we're talking about lines that have been active in the last 90 days. We're not talking about things that are ancient. One of the neat things in Kenya is they were one of the early innovators with mobile money. And there's 32 million people who use one of these services. There's 3 mobile money services, but the biggest one has 32 million active users in a country of a little bit more than 40 million. And with that, you can pay your grocery bill. When you go shopping at the local market, you can actually pay the vendor that way. You can actually pay your tithes and offerings to your church that way. And just this week, Bill Gates' comment on it was, eventually mobile money will trickle up to the rich countries.
Oh, wow.
So you're telling us that Africa is ahead of North America in mobile money.
Absolutely. And, you know, the developing countries have an advantage. They don't have billions of dollars tied up in old stuff.
Yes.
And therefore, they take a look at where things are going, and they can jump from paper to computer. They jump from having no phones to having cell phones, and the landline is not there. And instead of having to go and build the infrastructure multiple times by building it only once, they're rapidly catching up.
Well, let me tell you what's exciting for me right now. We have spent quite a bit of time here this week with a bunch of IT professionals around the church talking about technology and how we can integrate technology more into the ministries of the church.
Yes.
What we're noticing, Ron, with what you're saying is, while one country or one region might be advanced in this area, another country, another region is advanced in another area. And what we're finding is, as we coordinate more, even within the ministries of the church, we're going to start to even out some of the technologies, because we're going to be able to take advantage of the fact that in South America division they did this, and they're sharing it with the East African division. And with the East African division has already thought about these projects, they're sharing it with the NAD. And while you see advances in one area or another, as we work together, we lift each other up together. And that's part of the strength of what technology and communication and bringing ourselves closer can do. And it's not just in the technology realm. It will extend itself to sharing VBS ideas and stories.
You know, as we all become interconnected, our ability to share and not reinvent the wheel is enhanced. And every time I can just take something from a sister organization, from a sister church, and adapt it and reuse it. Because you can rarely use it just lock, stock, and barrel, exactly. But when I can do that, it makes me be able to do so much more with the limited amount of time and resources that I've got.
It's one more.
We have one more comment here from Hortense from Jamaica. Commented, I enjoy using the Bible on the phone. And he points out something that's very interesting that we can only do if we're using the Bible on the phone. It allows me to compare with other translations.
Oh, I love
absolutely.
that.
It's wonderful.
That is really a strong point, because you can just flip through the various translations and gain a whole new insight into the text that we're studying.
Yeah.
And I also want to remind you that please ask questions in English, Spanish, Portuguese, or French. We have translators here. So please, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to send them in. But now going back to the iPhone in church that you're holding in your hand. And all of a sudden, as the preacher's talking, you can look at the various translations. Do you find that distracting?
Distracting, not necessarily. It can be on occasion, but it's also often very enabling. You know, translations by their very nature are imperfect. And therefore, you know, sometimes some people are trying to make a point and you say, well, it's this checking up on things. And for some of us who may speak multiple languages say, well, I didn't remember it that way in the other language. And you go check it out and it's like, oh wow, I had never noticed that before.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it's like, okay, and we gain a blessing from seeing that. You know, honestly, I enjoy having my Bible and the books from the Spirit of Prophecy on my phone when my travels. You're sitting on an airplane for however many hours. I can do some interesting reading. I don't have to just watch whatever or sleep or just try to survive the flight.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we've got to be careful. Technology is a double-edged sword.
Oh, we talk about using technology to connect each other together.
Yeah.
You know, and I really like the point that you were making, Ron, about the different translations, and Hortense about being able to compare the different translations together. But when you think about the Bible, there's a couple of apps that I use. I mean, I think most people in the United States, one of the more popular Bible apps on the phone is something called YouVersion.
Yes.
And what YouVersion actually allows you to do is it allows you to friend people in the app, in the phone.
Yeah.
And so
We're friends.
I've just started doing that, and I've noticed that as I bookmark different Bible verses that are meaningful to me, I've started to notice my friends liking, again, right? They're liking the Bible verses that I'm reading, and it becomes not a real social experience, but kind of a
sharing,
a shared experience.
Yeah, a shared experience.
That's a good way of saying
And it's
it.
another way to connect.
That's right.
I think we got one more question.
Okay, Henrik in Brazil asked in the Portuguese conversation, in Brazil we have a lot of global mission communities, often including those in other religions. How can we use the internet to reach these communities?
I'll tell you what I would say.
Okay.
If you've got a community that you're trying to reach out to, and you know, it could be here in the States, you might have even a Hispanic community, or it could be a Russian community, or whatever. You look for what Adventist resources exist in that language. You can often, if you can't find them quickly, find somebody that's an Adventist from that community who can help you get that information. If it may take going to that conference or that union to get some information, there's plenty of Adventist resources. Then you can point them to the resources in their language, in their culture?
Well, I think we're needing to draw our conversation to a conclusion here.
Already?
Already. Are we
Okay.
just getting started? I know. I love talking about this and sharing with our online audience. We have a couple more questions, but I will address those when we go offline. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you for joining us and participating with us. And remember, we've had over now, today, before we started, we had over 900 people joining us in over 67 countries. So thank you for being with us today, and continue to watch our GAiN conference throughout the whole weekend and through Sunday. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's program and are planning to join us again tomorrow. We have an exciting program for you with presentations on trustworthy websites, geographic information systems, building apps, and online Bible tools. Please join our conversation online at GAiN.Adventist.org or Facebook/GAiNCon, and on Twitter using hashtag GAiN15. God bless. See you tomorrow.